Penguin Audio presents Fall from India Place by Samantha Young. Read for you by Chloe Lynn. Remember tonight, for it is the beginning of always. Attributed to Dante Alighieri. Chapter 1. Edinburgh, October. I'd made a promise to myself when I stepped onto the cobbled streets of Edinburgh, on the way to my first teaching job, that I'd be the kind of teacher who would do whatever it took to reach my students. Never mind that now keeping that promise meant embarrassing myself and them with my fantastically awful drawing skills. Removing my badly drawn illustrations from the projector, I replaced them with 2 sentences. I glanced up at the small class of 6 adults, ranging in age from 24 to 52, and gave them a wry smile. Though I hate to deprive you of my artistic genius, I think I'd better get rid of those. Portia, my 52-year-old student, who had enough good cheer to lighten the often nervous atmosphere in the small classroom, grinned at me, while Duncan, a 33-year-old mechanic, snorted. My other 4 students continued to stare at me wide-eyed and slightly scared, as though everything I said and did was a test. Now that you've learned these sight words and hopefully connected to them through my terrible attempts at drawing, I want you to become familiar with how they fit in an everyday sentence. For the rest of our time this evening, I want you to write these 2 sentences 10 times each. I watched Lorraine, my very, very anxious and prickly 24-year-old student, gnaw at her lip, and winced at the thought of what she might do to said lip after my next instruction. I continued, I've got 2 small booklets here for each of you. One is filled with sight words, the other with sentences made up entirely of sight words. I want you to choose 10 sentences and write those sentences out 10 times each and bring them with you next week. Lorraine blanched, and I immediately felt my chest squeeze with empathy. Lorraine was a prime example of why I'd decided to volunteer to teach an adult literacy course at my local community centre. Some people, like my friend Suzanne, thought I was absolutely nuts to take on a volunteer teaching job during my probationary year as a high school English teacher. And maybe I was. My workload for school was insane. However, I shared the literacy class with another volunteer, so it was only one night out of my week, and it was something that really made me feel like I was making a difference. Sometimes it was harder to see the impact I made in high school, and I knew that there would be an awful lot of days ahead of me when I wouldn't feel like I was leaving much of an impression. However, volunteering gave me that sense of satisfaction every single time. The adults I was teaching were mostly unemployed, with the exception of Portia and Duncan. Duncan's employer had asked him to improve his reading and writing skills. Portia had somehow managed to get through life on a very basic understanding of literacy and numeracy, until one day she decided she wanted more. But the others were struggling to maintain employment because of their lack of language and communication skills. I knew illiteracy was still a big deal in this country, but since I came from an educated family and was a massive bookworm, it was something I had never been touched by. Until last year. There was one moment.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?